My family loves mac and cheese, and they also love lobster. So for this holiday season, I thought what could be better than to make the ultimate lobster mac and cheese recipe. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make lobster mac and cheese. But before we get into it, if you're new to my channel, I'm Denise Jordan, and I teach women how to make wise home, health, and beauty decisions. So if you want to learn more about making and keeping a home, hit that subscribe button and tap that little bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Okay, let's jump into it. I just thought lobster mac and cheese would be perfect for this holiday season. And I found a really easy recipe on Food Wishes hosted by Chef John. And I tried it out. I made it for a special occasion for me and the hubby, and he absolutely loved it. So I knew that the rest of my family would love this combination. So we're going to go ahead and get that started. And so the first thing I'm going to do is butter my dish. And I'm choosing this little pie dish because I didn't want the mac and cheese to be too deep. I wanted to make sure everyone got some of the lobster and some of the topping. And again, lobster is pretty expensive, so it's not going to be a huge side dish. But let's go ahead and get that started. All right, so I slipped on my apron. And now we're going to butter this dish. And let me just show you real quick. This is one of those little short sticks of butter. And we will be using 2 tablespoons of butter in this recipe. And you can see the markings right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a short stick or half a stick of butter is 4 tablespoons. And I'll just use this to butter the dish, and then I'll cut my tablespoons off of here when I need it. So I'm just going to get this dish buttered, and you just roll the butter around in the dish like this. And here's my 2 tablespoon mark, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that aside. All right, so I buttered my dish. I'm going to set it aside. And now I'll just show you the big things that we're going to need. First of all, we're going to need some lobster tails, and I picked these up in the seafood case at Kroger. And this particular recipe that I'm going to make serves about 4, so you would want to double it or triple it if you wanted to make it go farther. But here are my lobster tails. Here, and I'm going to rinse them off, and then I'll also need a cup of macaroni, about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces of Gruyere cheese, and then 4 ounces of sharp white cheddar, as well as 1.5 cups of milk. Now we're going to need a few other things, butter and spices and oil and that kind of thing, and I'll mention those as we go along. But I thought I would just show you the big things first, and I will link the recipe to Chef John's channel in the description box, so don't feel like you've got to write everything down as we go along. So let's get these lobster tails rinsed off. And here's the thing, you just want to rinse them. You want to run the water over the top of them, but not all around them, because you don't want to rinse off too much of the flavors. So I'm just going to rinse over the top, and then I'll just set them on a plate. So now I'm going to heat my oil and cook my lobster. So I'm going to turn the burner on and add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a sharp knife split them in half, And then check to see if there's a little vein in there. Typically when you get them from Kroger, they've already removed that from it. But you just want to see if there's a vein or any kind of yucky stuff that's in there. This one looks pretty clean. And then we'll get the other one and do the same thing. Clean off any yucky stuff. Now we'll put our lobster in the pan where we've added our 2 teaspoons of oil. And we'll cook it about 2 minutes on each side. We don't want to cook it all the way through, we just want to partially cook it. Look how nice and red the shell has turned. Now we'll transfer this to a plate and get ready to make our roux. So now we're going to make our roux. We'll drop in our butter and melt that. And in case you're wondering, a roux is like a paste. You make it with flour and butter. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour and just kind of stir that into the butter. It's almost like how you make gravy. You can see it's changing color. And now that this is nice and hot, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of cold milk. And you just kind of stir that in. And we're using the same skillet we cooked the lobster in, so it's going to pick up any of those little bits of lobster that was left in the pan. Isn't this a pretty picture? I got that from one of my friends, Mary, from Mary's Nest, sent that to me, and I just love it. So I used 1.5 cups of milk, and I did measure out the 1.5 cups of milk before I put it in the pitcher. But I like to use it when I'm doing different things. So we're going to just let this cook. I'm going to turn the heat back up a little bit now to about medium as it starts to cook. And it's probably going to take 3 or 4 minutes for this roux to thicken. So we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, a pinch of cayenne pepper, a pinch of nutmeg, and then we'll stir all that up together, and it'll take on a nice, kind of just a little bit of a ruddy color. And then I'll add just a hint of salt. And you want to add salt to taste. So I just sprinkled a little bit in, and then I'll give it a taste to see if it's salty enough. Okay, I think this roux is ready. And now that the sauce is thickened, I'm going to turn the burner off and then just let it sit while I get the lobster out of the shell and take care of a few other things. Okay, so now let's get the lobster out of the shell. Get your thumb between the meat and the shell. And again, you just get your thumb between the meat and the shell. So now we're going to set these shells aside because we're going to use them. So now I'll bring my water to boil for the macaroni, and I will add some salt to the water. So I've dropped those lobster shells in the water that I'm also going to boil my macaroni in. And then I'll just add a nice little flavor to the macaroni as it cooks as well. So I'll get the macaroni added, but while that's boiling, I'll work on getting my cheese shredded and my lobster meat cut up. So let's get that done. So now I'll add the macaroni to the boiling water. And look how bright red those lobster shells are. Just going to cut this lobster up into bite-sized pieces. So here's our lobster meat all cut up and ready to go in our mac and cheese. I'll just set it aside. And now I'll just shred up my cheese. So this is the Gruyere cheese, and I need about 1 ounce of that. So this is probably about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces. And this is the sharp white cheddar. So I'll get both these grated up so they're ready to go in our cheese sauce. So now my cheese is grated, so let's put together this cheese sauce. Our macaroni is just about ready to come out. And our base for our cheese sauce has been just kind of sitting here. So now I'll add another bit of salt. Stir that in. We also add 3 drops of Worcestershire sauce. And then we can start adding in our cheese. And look at that, cheese is starting to melt. So we've got in our few drops of Worcestershire sauce. We've got in our 4 ounces of white cheddar cheese and about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces of Gruyere cheese, and it looks like this sauce is pretty much done. There's just a few little lumps in here that I couldn't get to shred because they were like right at the very end. But I'm going to turn this off. This sauce is done, and I'll set this off the burner, and I'll get the macaroni out of the pot. So now we're going to transfer the macaroni to the cheese sauce. And granted, we're getting just a little bit of water with it, but we need that moisture. Now we're just going to stir this macaroni in to our sauce. And the little kind of a cheesy, nutty aroma is wonderful. This would be a great mac and cheese even without the lobster. And I thought the same thing when I made it before. I did save a little bit the last time for us to have for breakfast the next morning. I just put some in a little ramekin, individual ramekins, and I didn't have any lobster in that. And it was perfect. So I was thinking, I can see just making this mac and cheese and enjoying the flavor of it even without the lobster. So now let me add in some fresh thyme. And I went and picked it off my porch. I've got a little pot of thyme that I had growing here in the kitchen. Then I put it outside, and there's just a little bit left on it. And it was just about, maybe a half a teaspoon of thyme, because as Chef John says, you don't want to overpower the flavor of the cheeses and the lobster with herb. So this looks pretty darn good. I think I'm ready to pour it into my buttered dish. And it looks nice and saucy. And here's the thing, you need it to be saucy, because if it's too dry when you bake it, it'll be too dry when you bake it up. And if you feel like you need a little additional liquid, you can just take a little bit of the pasta water and add that in, because you want it to be nice and saucy. And then when you bake it and then it sets, it'll be perfect. All right, so now let's pour it into our buttered casserole dish. And this is supposed to serve about 4, but I'll bet you if you're careful, you can probably get 6 servings out of this. And now we'll just top it with our lobster. And notice the pretty red that just kind of shows out. You can see the thyme leaves poking through just a little bit. Well, this is going to make a beautiful side dish. Now we'll just take a fork and poke the lobster down in the mac and cheese. That just kind of helps get some of the flavor of the lobster throughout the mac and cheese, but also it kind of protects the lobster a little bit from the heat. It kind of protects it from drying out. So we'll just poke it down a little bit, and then we're going to top this with some breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. It's just going to taste amazing. Your family's going to be like, wow, lobster mac and cheese. Well, all right. They're going to be so excited. Okay, now let's get the topping on. So now we're going to make our crumb topping. And all we're going to do is take a tablespoon of melted butter. Let me pop that in the microwave. So now we're going to make the breadcrumb topping, and all we're going to take is 1 tablespoon of melted butter, and I just put this in the microwave to melt it. And then we're going to have 3 tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs. So get the breadcrumbs and the butter all nicely mixed together. And then we'll stir in 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, grated Parmesan cheese. Just mix that all together. And it'll make a nice, tasty topping. I probably could have used a little bigger bowl. I don't know what I was thinking to get one so small. There. And what wanted to let you see me melt the butter and then the mixing of the breadcrumbs into that, but I didn't get a big enough bowl. So there you go. You can see it's all nicely mixed together, and now we'll just spread this topping over our lobster mac and cheese. Look how nicely that spreads, and that's going to provide a nice crunchy little topping. Try to get all of it covered. Make sure that's spread. Now when Chef John made it, he just put it in 2 large gratin dishes so that it would make 2 large servings for a romantic dinner. But I wanted to make it for a holiday side dish. Now we'll put this in the oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. Can't wait for it to come out. Now while I'm waiting for that to come out of the oven, I'll go ahead and clean up the dishes that I got out. But I did want to show something to my young housekeepers, my young homemakers that are just learning to cook before I moved on. And one of them is that we did use grated Parmesan cheese, and I bought it in the deli. It was already grated, and it looks like this. And it's pretty fine. So you see it kind of goes like that. But you can buy Parmesan cheese in a container. Now it's not as good, but it does last for a while and it works just fine. So use the Parmesan cheese that you have. But if you go out to purchase some for this recipe, then I encourage you to buy some that's been grated fresh. The other thing I mentioned was breadcrumbs, and I mentioned panko breadcrumbs, and that was what Chef John suggested, so that was what I got. And this particular box comes with 2 bags, which I thought was kind of neat, because while you've got one open, then the other one is closed, so it just keeps them a little fresher. But look how large these breadcrumbs are. They're really pretty large. And a lot of times you might see these used for frying and other things like that. But they really add a nice little crunch. And now you can get other breadcrumbs. They don't have to be panko, but panko breadcrumbs do make the nicest topping. So I'm going to put this back in the box. Put these away, and then I'll get those dishes washed. But oh, let me tell you one more thing. One of the things you want to make sure you do have on hand whenever you're cooking is a nice set of measuring cups or measuring bowls. Now these are the Pioneer Woman measuring cups, and they have 4 cups, and I pretty much got them because they're pretty. I saw another YouTuber use them and I had to have them, so I ordered them. But this is the 1 cup size, 1/2 cup, 2/3 cup, and then 1/4 cup. And when you buy these ceramic cups, that tends to be how they come. 1 cup, 1/2 cup, 1/3 cup, and then 1/4 cup. If you buy a set of nesting cups like this, you tend to get more sizes. You'll get 1/4 cup, 1/3 cup, 1/2 cup, but also a 3/4 cup measure, as well as the 1 cup. And these are Tupperware. I've had them forever, and as you can see, the little orange one to this one is missing, and then for the green one, all the other ones are missing. So this is what I've got left, but I've had them forever. And a set of nesting cups like this is probably more functional and more practical for everyday cooking. But I do use these quite often just because they're pretty and I like them, and I love pretty cups and bowls and those kinds of things. But if you want something purely practical and functional, you want to get a set of nesting cups like this. And you also want to have a good set of measuring spoons. Now these two are Tupperware, and I've had these for over 10 years. And I've got another set that's like this color, but a couple of spoons are missing. But the nice thing about this is you get some unusual sizes, and you can't get those in other sets. So this is a 1/8 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon, 1/2 teaspoon, 1 teaspoon, 1.5 teaspoon measure, 1 tablespoon, and 4 teaspoons measure. And this one is really kind of nice because there's lots of times you need 4 teaspoons of something, and you can use this particular one for that. Now, one of the things though that I've been thinking more about with measuring spoons is it's really nice if they fit into your spice jar. And whereas these smaller ones will fit into the spice jar without any problem, this 1 teaspoon size does not. So I think I'm going to order a new set of measuring spoons, some that will slip into a spice jar, and I will find some of those, and I'll link them below in the description box just in case you're interested in taking a look at those. So, and I'll link some of these things below as well. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was this. So you guys saw me whisking in this skillet, and this is a non-stick skillet. It's a Diamond non-stick skillet. It's one of the Curtis Stone brand. But if you're working with a non-stick surface, make sure that you can whisk in that non-stick surface. And what I mean by that is make sure it doesn't damage your non-stick surface. With this particular one by Curtis Stone, one of the things that they advertise with this particular set is that you can use, you don't just have to use plastic utensils in it. You can use metal utensils and things are fine. And when I whisk in it, I don't get any scratches or anything like that. So if you're using a skillet in your home that has a non-stick surface, you want to make sure it's okay to use something other than nylon or plastic tools in it. Otherwise, you might end up messing up your surface. So just wanted to share that with my young homekeepers. So now let me go ahead and wash these dishes, and I'm waiting for my lobster mac and cheese to come out. Oh my goodness, look at that. Does that not look amazing? Let's get it out. This looks absolutely amazing. Let me bring you in for a close-up. This just looks amazing. I cannot wait to taste it. Just look at that. Oh my goodness. Now I have to wait for it to cool, but while it's cooling, we can garnish the top with some of our lobster shells. We'll just see how that works out. Doesn't this look amazing? Oh my goodness. I know when I made it for the hubby before, he loved it. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep him out of it until time for dinner, but I'll get a little bit of taste out of the corner of it. Let's do that. So it's still pretty hot. Actually too hot to taste, but it's nice and moist. Look at the steam coming off of it. Right now it's still moist enough that I might be able to cover up that hole before it really sets, but delicious. Let me cover up that hole. So if you want to make this lobster mac and cheese, I will link Chef John's Food Wishes recipe below so that you can make it yourself. And if mac and cheese is your thing, you definitely want to check out my best baked macaroni and cheese. I will link it above as well as below. And then if you're thinking holiday food, you might want to check out my Thanksgiving 101 playlist, because in that playlist I show you how to roast a turkey. And I show you how to make my famous mac and cheese, how to make cornbread dressing, how to make collard greens, how to make candied sweet potatoes, and other dishes you just might want on your holiday table. And to my young homekeepers out there, let me know what it is that you want me to make for you. I want you to be comfortable in your role. And just so you all know, I've managed a home for more than 45 years. I've raised 3 children, and I am a nurse by profession. So if you want to learn more about running a household, cooking and cleaning and laundry and health and beauty, subscribe. I would love to have you as a member of the TNT community. In the meantime, this is Denise Jordan saying goodbye. I will see you next time.